Good morning, everybody. This is a live briefing. I know it's been a few days since our last live. The last storm chase was actually on Christmas Eve, and this looks like it's going to be the first year in a long time, maybe the first year ever in my storm chasing career where we chased both on Christmas Eve and on New Year's Eve with pretty substantial tornado events coming through. And this is a map that I made showing the different tornado alleys that I've chased over the years. You can see the big red zone. Massive Dixie Alley stretches from the Texas Piney Woods all the way across large portions of the south central U.S. Then we've got the Carolina Alley out here, the mid-Atlantic zone, and I probably should extend that down into portions of central Florida, as Florida gets more wintertime tornadoes, certainly, than most other states out there. And it looks like I'm going to be chasing Dixie Alley coming up late Wednesday night through Thursday. That's on New Year's Eve. I do also expect a tornado threat Wednesday late afternoon, evening, maybe overnight Wednesday across central Texas, and then that threat ejects off to the northeast. Looks like Thursday morning across portions of southwestern Dixie Alley. Then a potentially more substantial tornado threat across portions of Mississippi and Alabama. But during this live, we're going to break down exactly where we expect that to happen. You can see I've split Tornado Alley into the High Plains and Tornado Alley Central locations. Thinking about renaming this kind of the Corn Belt corridor, extending it off to the northwest into portions of Wisconsin, maybe even southeastern Minnesota, northeastern Iowa location, maybe expanding it a bit further north into lower Michigan and even southern Ontario, where there is a bit of a tornado alley up there as well. But usually the wintertime locations are Dixie Alley and this Atlantic Carolina zone, Piedmont area that stretches from central Florida east of the southern and central Appalachians all the way up to Delmarva. Arguably, you could include that in that zone. That's the location that we were chasing on Christmas Eve. Looks like on New Year's Eve, we're going to be chasing Dixie Alley, traditional track meet of a storm chase out there. Fast-moving storm motions, dynamic upper-level system. And wouldn't be surprised. I don't think today looks like an event in California, but oftentimes in the winter, the Sacramento Valley can become a hot spot, and that includes into portions of Southern California. A lot of thunder last night, Southern California, including the Los Angeles area. A lot of snow in the mountains there of Southern California as well. We'll break down some of those alerts, and that's the system that's going to bring severe weather to Dixie Alley, the one that brought thunder last night across Southern California. That's going to eject off to the northeast toward the Ohio River Valley. The warm sector is going to overspread south central Dixie Alley. And if there is enough instability, this could be a pretty substantial severe weather and a tornado event. And then there's another system coming in back behind it that could bring some more snowfall across portions of the southern Appalachians. I'll be covering both of those systems. The lead system at Dixie Alley on Thursday. That'll be the day after my class with varsity tutors. And then looks like potential snow with that next system coming in for the weekend. That's going to be next weekend, the latter portion of next weekend. But I still need to do some adjustment to these maps. I also need to extend the High Plains Tornado Alley further north into Saskatchewan. I've actually chased up in this area quite a bit over here, well north of Medicine Hat near the Provost area, east through Saskatoon. This area gets a lot of tornadoes, and I should have expanded the Tornado Alley High Plains a little bit further north. Tornado Alley Central, only limited by Lakes Winnipeg and Manitoba out there. Difficult area to chase, but you get a lot of water spouts up there as well. And definitely the Rocky Mountains, putting a little bit of a damper on tornadoes, but you could definitely get tornadoes in the Rocky Mountains. There was that big EF4 out near the Yellowstone Tetons area out there in the mountains. There was also a tornado on Mount Evans above 12,000 feet that was documented by a storm chaser / hiker up there. You do get quite a bit of tornadoes up mountains, many in the Appalachians, including on the super outbreak. You had tornadoes above 2,000 feet out there in the mountainous locations. So this map isn't completely dictated by topography, but I really just wanted to outline those areas that have similarly behaving severe weather events. You could basically look at these as like principal component loading patterns, PCA loading patterns, the spatial patterns here that co-vary in terms of their severe weather, and also the chasing terrain. These areas are lumped together by similar chasing terrain, especially Dixie Alley, that western boundary there of Dixie Alley, determined largely by topography with the basically plains, traditional Tornado Alley terrain to the west of that boundary. To the east of it, heavily forested, kind of bounded by the Ozark Plateau there on the northwestern side. You get a lot of river valleys, a lot of heavily forested areas. There are some areas within Dixie Alley, though, that are pretty decent for storm chasing with those breaks in the forested terrain out there, especially along the Mississippi River Valley. That Mississippi Delta out there is incredible chase terrain, even better than many locations in the high plains or traditional Tornado Alley. And there's even some breaks across eastern Mississippi into Alabama, some breaks in that dense forest that will lead to some decent storm chasing terrain. An incredible storm chasing terrain in this zone to the east of the Appalachians, east of the foothills of the Appalachians there as well, and even some decent terrain up here in the northeastern corridor. And I should probably adjust that Tornado Alley a little bit as well, expand it off to the west near the Erie, Pennsylvania areas, maybe even northeastern Ohio, maybe a little bit further north into the Adirondacks. You can get some decent storms up there as well, but definitely removed from the I-95 corridor, which is largely unchaseable out there in terms of severe weather, mainly due to the traffic out there in that area. So now I'm going to break down the individual models. Let's just get a general idea of what's going on. This is the 6C operational GFS. And there you can see that system that brought the thunder overnight last night to Southern California. Much needed rainfall out there. It's always a big deal, big news story when you get thunder and heavy rain down there. And it's because of this big bowling ball of a vorticity maximum coming on shore there in Southern California. And it has a lot of cold temperatures aloft also associated with that. Look at all these temperatures well below minus 25 degrees Celsius at 500 millibars, about 15,000 feet up, about 5,000 meters up there. A lot of cold air barreling into Southern California, and that's why we do have those alerts as well. Some winter storm warnings out there in the mountains of Southern California, that higher terrain. Definitely getting quite a bit of snow overnight last night, and now that's because of that cold pocket of air aloft. You can see a big bowling ball of a storm system. But that's the system that is going to bring severe weather to portions of Dixie Alley, and the evolution of this storm system is going to be important. The timing at which it turns off to the north. This is Monday evening. This is late night tonight at about midnight. There you can see that Vortmax. Digs way down into Baja California, down into Mexico, northern Mexico here. Strong positive tilt. A bit of a parent Vortmax up across the northern plains as well. And then we've got this bowling ball of a system that is trying to cut off here across northern Mexico. But while it's cutting off, it's also gaining more of a neutral tilt. And the timing for this transition from a neutral tilt cutoff system to gain more of a negative tilt seems to be perfect here for Dixie Alley. This is basically a cutoff system, the parent Vortmax over the northern plains, quickly ejecting through eastern Canada there. And then you can also see this kicker system back behind it that could bring a snow event to the southern Appalachians, portions of the southeastern U.S. late next weekend, toward the end of this week. And we'll keep an eye on that. But this system that's going to bring the severe weather to Dixie Alley could open the door for cold air behind it, and then potentially bring a snow event to portions of the southern Appalachians. But you can see this system trying to close off there in northern Mexico, but now it's starting to lift off to the northeast, getting picked up by that jet just a little bit more and gaining a negative tilt. Even though this is a cutoff system, it does have the appearance of a bit of an open wave embedded within this split flow pattern, almost an El Nino-like pattern with this split flow across the U.S. Some elements of La Nina also, this pattern with a very progressive wave train across North America, one after another. And that's why I think that the severe weather season is going to be very active coming up this spring, as we have a La Nina spring, one of the first substantial La Nina springs we've seen since 2011, which was a record-breaking severe weather season, especially April, with over 700 tornadoes during that month alone. But this system is trying to get a negative tilt, and a lot of that is facilitated by this kicker system that's going to come in behind it. This is Thursday evening right here. So one thing I'm noticing is that the GFS is trending a bit slower with this cutoff system, trying to cut it off there in northern Mexico, a slower ejection as it lifts northeast across the southern plains. but it is getting more of a negative tilt just in time for when it reaches Dixie Alley. And this bowling ball of the system is lifting northeast toward the Ohio River Valley, but that's going to overspread. Pretty strong 500 millibar flow, a very stout low-level jet with this upper low ejecting from northern Mexico, lifting off to the northeast. And look at these relatively veered mid and upper level winds as well. A strong westerly component to those upper level winds. You're not going to have as much of those meridional components quite as much to the storm motions. And look at this monster low-level jet. Very large warm sector stretching from eastern Louisiana, southeastern Arkansas, across Mississippi, Alabama. And with this system slowing down a little bit too, that's going to bring the severe weather threat the day before on Wednesday into central Texas. I'm not sure if it's going to be timed right with the ejection of this system to get storms during the daylight hours there in central Texas. We'll break that down though as these models are coming in. But it is going to be perfect timing for a big-time Dixie Alley event there on Thursday night. It's definitely going to be a event that develops probably here near the Mississippi River, overspreading central and southern Mississippi, eventually Alabama. But this is Thursday evening, so this system is definitely slowing down with time. Could be kind of a one-day event. See if Friday looks like it could happen in Piedmont Alley. The Vort is ejecting toward the Great Lakes, so that's probably going to veer out a lot of the shear and give some more unidirectional profiles. But there is does appear to be a chance of some severe weather on Friday across Carolina Alley, with those dew points surging into the 60s there east of the Appalachians. Basically a similar setup to Christmas Eve coming up here on New Year's Eve as well. And GFS does have low to mid 60s dew points here on Thursday. The GFS is going to keep coming up with that moisture. You can see the direct fetch too with those deeper dew points, with those dew points in the 70s over the central and southern Gulf of Mexico, feeding this system here. But this is the 6Z GFS. I'm still waiting patiently for the 12Z GFS. Pretty compact cutoff low that dives down into northern Mexico, then lifts northeast. Kind of this pseudo negative tilt as well, which leads to a low-level jet that covers a multi-state area across Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Even Tennessee up there as well is probably going to get in on the action. Here you can see the kicker system coming in back behind it. That one's going to lead to some potential snowfall for the southern Appalachians. And then the system basically reaches its peak intensity as it's ejecting off to the northeast with that pseudo-negative tilt. Really a bowling ball of an upper system, but a large area of strong mid and upper level flow downstream. Strong 700 millibar winds. This is by Friday morning, so this is going to be a nocturnal event as well. Thursday night into Friday. Look at that 700 millibar flow there, exceeding 80 knots. Low level jet exceeding 50 knots there. So it looks like the latest models are trending a little bit slower with this system, which is definitely going to bring Mississippi potentially in on the action. I do expect as we get within the NAM model, especially the HRRR NAM, shorter range models, they're going to have a better handle on this instability and the moisture return ahead of the system. But we can use the GFS to get an idea of the evolution of this upper system. Still a lot of uncertainty with the timing of this system too, as it cuts off across northern Mexico and then ejects off to the northeast. We're going to head toward the upper Great Lakes, bringing that flow all the way across Dixie Alley and the moisture. And then we've got this system coming in behind it, shearing out a bit, getting that strong positive tilt. This one's not going to bring severe weather across Dixie Alley, but a lot of rain, a lot of isentropic lift over that cold air mass left behind by the severe weather system with this. And this could bring in some decent snowfall for the southeast. Look at that little bowling ball. 500 millibar temps, well below minus 25, heading right over the southern Appalachians. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a decent snow event across parts of the southern apps of this, especially with that cold blob of air aloft. That system goes out to sea. A late arrival of that big high pressure that's not really anchored there in time to block and lead to a... Oh, look at the California getting hammered once again. Another atmospheric river system setting up. I'm not seeing much in the way of a big northeastern U.S. snowstorm with this. It does look like there's going to be a big icing event on the northwest side of this system. Severe weather and tornadoes potentially in the warm sector, but a big icing event setting up for portions of central Missouri. Spreading into central and northern Illinois as well. Could be a period of some heavy snow on the backside that could impact areas like Kansas City down through southeastern Kansas. See what the 0Z. Pretty good, strong agreement with the position of the surface low there between the European, operational European 60 GFS and the 0Z European last night. Definitely showing a big mid-latitude cyclone. Basically almost like a Colorado low, except originating at lower latitudes and then lifting off to the northeast toward the Chicago area, dropping down into the upper 990s. Could be quite a bit of snow here across portions of Wisconsin, northwestern Illinois, northern Michigan again. And this is the system that could bring severe weather to Dixie Alley. With this trend a little bit further west, though, it does look like Thursday is going to be the day, possibly even west of the Mississippi River. Looks like southern Arkansas down to central southern Louisiana. Basically an arc of convection developing from that surface low down toward the central Gulf Coast. Could be west of the Mississippi River, though. Earlier yesterday and the day before, it looked like this was going to be a more progressive system, bringing that severe weather more into Alabama, Georgia area. But now it's slowing down with last night's European 60 GFS still in agreement. Could be some decent winter weather there on the backside of that low across portions of the southern plains. Oklahoma into North Texas. Icing event beginning here on the north side into central Missouri. But a strong surface low with that upper system basically cutting off over northern Mexico and then ejecting a lot of vorticity ejection upstream of that. Even though it does appear to have some cutoff characteristics, it still is a relatively open wave with a bulbous vortmax. A lot of flow on its south and eastern side too. So a lot of vorticity ejection downstream, leading to a pretty stout surface low into the mid 990s that's going to lift northeast toward the Great Lakes. And by Thursday morning, that convective line, according to the Euro, already closing in on the Georgia border there. And there's going to be an overnight severe weather event, most likely, here across Dixie Alley, Alabama, eastern Mississippi. Daytime severe weather and tornadoes possible across northeastern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, all the way down into southeastern Louisiana, and that line marches all the way to the east. Still quite a bit of wind shear, even with that convective line by Friday morning, as it's this will be the first day of 2021, as it's closing in to that Georgia border, Georgia-Alabama border. But really, this system peaks on Thursday, well to the west. This is the low-level jet, according to the European. Not as robust of a low-level jet with this European solution, but still in excess of 50, approaching 60 knots there, southeastern Louisiana, southwestern Mississippi, all the way into southern Arkansas. There are traditional storm chasing zones there across southern Dixie, dew points in the mid, even upper 60s across eastern Louisiana, but it is trending slower, certainly. And we also need to look at the day before in South Texas, which is within the it's like South Central Texas, East Texas here with this event. So you can see a bit of the overlap. This is the NAM, 72 hours out, Wednesday evening. This is the 0 to 3 kilometer energy helicity index, basically showing where that instability and the favorable kinematics are overlapped. And it definitely looks like the southern piney woods there to the west and northwest of Houston, maybe even further south, could get some decent instability in there. Supercell composite, 5 to 6 to 7 out there. Looks like kind of the southern hill country there, well to the west of Houston. Pretty good dew points, though. You've got mid to upper 60s out there in a plume into south central Texas. The low-level jet, though, hasn't really fired by this time. You can see that low-level jet basically around 30 knots, kind of a skinny little hodograph here. Definitely bulk shear, though, favoring supercells with that 4, 5, and 6 kilometer winds, exceeding 40 knots there, 40, 50 to 60 knots. So this is the day before the day down here in Texas, but the NAM is certainly showing some moisture, some instability out there. And a low-level jet, modest low-level jet that's going to be intensifying throughout the day. But there you can see it across the southern hill country. This is at 0Z. Definitely increasing as the day goes on. This is at 15Z, 18Z. And a decent low-level jet in excess of 40 knots here across South Texas. So this could certainly be a storm chase. The southern hill country of Texas here into the southern piney woods to the west and to the northwest of Houston. Looks like there's going to be a convective mass, probably an MCS that develops across central and northern Texas. And then the south side looks like some convective lines, maybe some supercells being hinted at by the NAM, filling in there as well across south central Texas. So I do think that there is a chance of tornadoes between about 4 and 7 p.m. here in Texas, well to the west of Houston, south central Texas, maybe down near Austin, east of Austin, out in those areas. West of College Station certainly could be interesting. And not a bad hodograph with that low-level jet accelerating up above 40 knots. The 2, 3, and 4 kilometer zone looks like a negative contribution to the helicity there in kind of the upper part of the low-level jet area into the mid-levels of the atmosphere. That certainly could do a number on the supercell structures. But in the low levels, quite a bit of storm relative helicity in the lowest 1 to 2 kilometers, and the critical angle of about 70 degrees. Definitely pretty sufficient. Looks saturated, though, very saturated there. Likely some cloud cover. Going to be battling some cloud cover there in south central Texas to the west of College Station. But I think there's going to be plenty of heating down there to generate. It's on the pivotalweather.com website, an incredible website for visualizing this model data. And it's showing quite a bit decent instability axis here, even approaching 2,000 Cape there to the east of San Antonio. Close to the I-95 corridor. Some favorable hodographs, a little bit of veering though at the very lowest levels of the atmosphere. Some south-southwest winds there. Kind of a modestly intensifying low-level jet as well. So these hodographs come together a bit late down to South Texas, but if I lived in the San Antonio area, I would definitely chase this event as well. I would certainly chase Dixie on New Year's Eve. Looks like the bigger event probably in Louisiana, southeastern Arkansas into Mississippi, and then overnight Mississippi, Alabama. Could be quite interesting. Let's look at the 0 to 1 kilometer helicities. And this is definitely picking up on some of the veered surface winds out there beneath that low-level jet of about 40 knots. And that's why you've got kind of some marginal 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicities below 200 meters squared per second squared, a little higher as you get closer to Houston. But I think that this main convective line between 21Z, between about 3, 4 p.m. Central Time and 6 or 7 p.m. in the evening, this is the area that you need to watch for those severe storms developing. You can see the more favorable hodograph near the core of that low-level jet with that 1 kilometer wind getting above or closing in on 50 knots there, but still a weird little veer regime between 2, 3, 4, 5 kilometers out there. This is kind of a negative contribution to the storm relative felicity there in that photograph. This is a positive contribution, quite a bit of low-level storm relative felicity. And those mid and upper level winds, plenty strong in a bulk sense to evacuate that rain and hail from the updraft and get those supercell storms. And tomorrow's live briefing, the Dixie Alley event will start getting into the NAM envelope. You can already see that low-level jet start to increase out ahead of that ejecting upper system. Large low-level jet is going to take over from Louisiana, southeastern Arkansas, across the lower Mississippi River Valley, Mississippi, Alabama there. That's going to fill in. This is Thursday morning, the morning ahead of the system. And you're getting a more compact 850 millibar low over there over eastern Texas. And that's going to become more compact as you go through the morning hours on Thursday, ramping up that low-level jet downstream. Here you can see the cutoff system. Thursday morning, the NAM has it lifting up through northern Mexico, crossing the Rio Grande. A little bit more westerly low-level flow here, but still this kind of egg-shaped upper-level system has quite a neutral tilt Thursday morning, and that's going to become more negatively tilted as this upper system pivots to the northeast, lifting up toward the Ohio River Valley. Perfect timing for that pivot to get a pretty substantial severe weather event across southern Dixie Alley. And the GFS is a little bit further south of that vort, but it looks like pretty general agreement between the NAM and the GFS. The NAM has a more compact vort max, but they both have that neutral tilt there Thursday morning. The NAM shows it a little bit more with that egg-shaped vort max. And then here is the European model. So the NAM has a stronger system just a little bit further north as well. And a lot of this depends on its interaction with that kicker system that's coming in behind it. That should bring some winter weather again to the southern Appalachians toward the end of next weekend. Here's the Gfs Evolution. And then this is when that ejection happens, the pivot of this upper level system starting to gain a bit more of that negative tilt. This is being that effective trough axis. That's going to bring a lot of difluence aloft over top Dixie Alley. That's going to accelerate, act to intensify that monster low-level jet downstream. And then it lifts off to the northeast, bringing that strong flow and moisture and instability across Dixie Alley. This is by Friday morning. So really the timing here is just about perfect. But if this ejection happens too early and this lifts off to the northeast, then you're not going to get the perfect overlap of instability, wind shear that you need for a more substantial outbreak of storms. These cutoff systems, models aren't as good at handling the ejection or the evolution of these, especially when you get kind of a double-barreled cutoff system like this, with the vort coming in back behind it. This one lifting off to the northeast. A lot of that's caused by this back vort max becoming dominant. That one's not going to bring severe weather, has more of a positive tilt. Now let's look at Southern California really quick to close this out. Let's see how this system looks now. Pull up the Radar Omega app. I'm definitely going to be storm chasing this event in Dixie Alley on New Year's Eve. I'm kind of at my mom's place. I'm definitely in position to chase Dixie Alley pretty conveniently. A lot of winter weather advisories and alerts, too, across the Mountain West. Visualize these in the Radar Omega app, but these are all those winter storm warnings in Southern California associated with that very cold bowling ball of a vortex aloft. Looking at some of these. 6 and 12 inch, between 6 and 12 inches of snow, even greater above 5,000 feet. Lighter snowfall below that. Probably get quite a bit more than that. Definitely some double-digit snowfall totals there in the higher terrain of Southern California. And snow lovers in the southern mountains of Colorado, the San Juans are going to like this. Wolf Creek, looks to be a lot of snow down there with these winter storm warnings. 1 to 2 feet, locally higher amounts. Probably get 2 to 3 feet up there across portions of the San Juans. And that's going to go until 5 p.m. tomorrow. So basically through the day today, through tomorrow. Winter weather advisory is there for the foothills to the west of Denver, depending where my apartment's located. And you can see that snow just starting to move in to the western edge of these alerts. Western Colorado there. Winter weather advisories across Utah, all the way down to the beautiful portions there of southwestern Utah, canyon country. This is where I intercepted that flash flood, led by David Rankin, flash flood chasing expert out here. Johnson Canyon, just to the east of Kanab. Beautiful scenes of snowfall out there, though, with these winter weather advisories down there near Zion. 6 to 12 inches of snow, this bowling ball of a system. Definitely does have some El Nino characteristics to it with this active southern branch of the jet stream. I think we have this kind of hybrid La Nina, El Nino setup because you have the cold water in the tropical Pacific, but then you also have very warm water in the extratropical Pacific and the subtropical zone of the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. But this is the system that's eventually going to eject across Dixie Alley later on this week, leading to tornado potential on Thursday. Looks like the latest models are slowing down a little bit, bringing that severe weather even west of the Mississippi River. Probably Louisiana target on Thursday into Mississippi, into southwestern Mississippi, Natchez area down there. But there you can see the winter weather alerts. Taos looks like it's going to get some good snow out of this one too, diving off to the south. And then you've got the winter storm warnings across central Iowa for that ejection to the northwest of that low, 4 to 8 inches. The higher end of that range in central Iowa, so it does look like a pretty good storm there for Des Moines. See what our friends in Omaha are going to get. 4 to 6 inches of snow, mixing in with some ice as well. And who knows, some of the models are showing some of that winter precipitation bringing down into Oklahoma on the backside of that 995 millibar low as it lifts northeast, bringing severe weather across portions of Dixie Alley. So a pretty exciting week ahead. Tomorrow's live briefing is going to be extremely informative as we're starting to get into the NAM envelope, and we'll have a better sampling of the Dixie Alley portion of this upper level event. But some pretty good agreement between the GFS and the European and even the NAM. The latest NAM does appear to be coming in a little bit further north, but with a more intense vort here cutting off over northern Mexico. This wave in the northern branch leaves this one behind, and then we've got this system coming in behind it. Definitely the NAM is starting to resolve this system. A lot of flow in the backside, so this one, when it's coming into California, is still intensifying, digging off to the south, and really kind of the co-evolution of these two systems will determine how quickly this egg-shaped vortex gains that effective negative tilt as it ejects off to the northeast toward the Ohio River Valley. The timing, shape of that ejection is going to be key. The models likely don't have the best handle on that ejection off to the northeast too, so we're going to keep an eye on that as we go through the coming days. But definitely some severe weather to watch. Instability building to the downstream of this system. The NAM kind of gives you an idea of where that instability axis is going to set up. A lot of instability just offshore over the open Gulf. It's going to spread over eastern Louisiana into southwestern Mississippi. That's where it looks like this event's setting up on Thursday. And then overnight, Thursday night, New Year's Eve night, shifting off to the east across Alabama, eventually reaching the Alabama-Georgia border by Friday morning, the first morning there of 2021. And the NAM with a stronger system, more bulbous upper level system, seems to reach that pseudo negative tilt a bit earlier, leading to a stronger low level jet downstream, but covering those multiple states. Because it gains that negative tilt, you get a bigger pressure shift from west to east, exciting that southerly low level jet. And this is the key for getting tornadoes, for generating the low level shear sufficient for tornadoes. And when you get that low level jet that's over multiple states like this, sometimes it can even mean an outbreak, because you get more favorable shear conditions for tornadoes over multiple states. So I'm going to keep breaking this down, this pattern. The tornado alleys look like they're going to be impacting, of course, is Dixie Alley. Maybe on Friday, a severe weather event across the Carolina Alley. And I need to extend that down into central Florida for sure, especially given those wintertime stats down there in Florida. You get a lot of tornadoes down there, especially during those El Nino events. Dixie Alley, I am considering shifting to the northeast to include all of Kentucky, maybe even portions of far southern Ohio and western West Virginia, all the way up to the Appalachians. Tornado Alley Midwest, I'm thinking about renaming after something to do with the Corn Belt. You get a lot of MCSs in that Midwestern branch of Tornado Alley as well late in the season. Kind of similarly evolving convective events out there and storm chase opportunities. Similar geography out there too, similar chase terrain within that zone. So I'm going to continue to evolve this map as we go into 2021. Thank you everybody for tuning into my weather report this morning. I'm going to be storm chasing live. Live storm chasing is made possible by the Facebook supporter community. Thank you to everybody. Thank you supporters for making this possible. Never thought I'd be storm chasing on both Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve in the same year, but it does look like it's going to be happening in 2020. So have a great rest of your Monday. Never stop chasing.